This meeting is being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. Good evening and welcome to the F&GP meeting, Finance and General Purposes meeting tonight, the 14th of November. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Madam Clerk, do we have any apologies?
Apologies received from councillors Ellen Crumley, Mark Lillycrop and Jennifer Walker. And we have Councillor Richard Crumley appointed as substitute for Councillor Ellen Crumley.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councillor Richard Crumley, thank you very much indeed for coming in place of Ellen. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, Chairman. Thank you.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declarable interest in any of the items on this agenda? And obviously, please do just mention it if we get to the point and you suddenly realise that you do have a declarable interest. Item 3 is minutes. Can I have a proposal that we take the minutes of the 11th of July as a true record, and just en passant to say, I think we all know it, but the meeting we were going to have in September, we simply, in the event, I did a couple of business items with the clerk, but other than that, we just held it over. It seemed to be essential to have that meeting at the time. I do apologise. You were going to propose the minutes, I believe. And do we have a seconder?
Chair, I wasn't at that meeting. So
that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're proposing that they shall be adopted through record.
yeah, I just saw you looking at me. But I'm happy to second it like this.
Thank you very much indeed. Those in favour? And that is passed. Thank you very much indeed. I will just make this as an idle passing comment. In the next 6 months, we'll have 7 or 8 months or something, we'll have a brand new council. And because you have a brand new council at the end of an election, you may find that you have got 18 members of council that have not attended any previous meeting, and they will have to adopt or not adopt minutes. Being present at a meeting is not the crunch point in adopting minutes. It's a decision to adopt or not adopt the minutes. Anyway, I think if we were actually adopting them on the basis that we believe that the clerk had actually made a proper record, I think that would get a little bit invidious, unless anyway. Item 4, matters arising. Madam Clerk, you
Nothing from me, Chairman.
And does anybody else have any matters that they wish to bring up? Thank you. Item 5, we now get to the nitty-gritty income and expenditure costs, which you will find in your bundle of papers. The points you particularly wish us to take note, Clerk.
But there's nothing surprising within the budget, Chairman, so nothing to bring to members' attention, but happy to answer any questions as we work through.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, points they want to tease out?
Just for the record, they say current year, Madam Clerk, as a non-accountant, everything's set, I presume, shown as a positive, except rates minus 2,454. Does that mean we owe them, but we haven't paid them yet? Or
the rates, that is a rebate. The rates from last year, legislation has been passed that public toilets are no longer rateable. So we've received reimbursement for last year's.
so accountancy being the wonderful thing that it is, a minus sign means it's money coming in.
Good, yes.
Thank you.
In that case, may I ask the question that we got, or we received, sorry, right technology, that we received the income and expenditure cost to note to date. That was proposed. And do we have a seconder? Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 6, town centre pharmacies. This really is one for me to a couple of comments on. I don't think there's anybody in Thatcham that is not by now aware of the problems that they're having with the pharmacies. Obviously, it was disappointing to lose the Lloyd's in the Kingston Centre to start with, And then we've had the additional problem that the Crown Mead Lloyd's pharmacy has not been able to function properly for the last some weeks. And in addition, since the beginning of COVID, people have been made, understandably, to queue outside the entrance of the Boots pharmacy. With the COVID restrictions going, I think that with regards to the Boots situation, it's been not appropriate that people of any age or none, you know, pregnant mums and you know, people with young babies and so on have had to queue. And my own personal best was an hour and a quarter in the hot sun during the summer, and 20 minutes, 30 minutes is very, very typical indeed, without anything to lean on, nothing to sit on. And that's going on at the same time as the major problem that we were getting at the Lloyd's pharmacy in Crown Mead, where apparently they lost a pharmacist or retired or went off somewhere else. And as a result, they were not able to handle the scripts that were coming in, the prescriptions that were coming in, because obviously many of them come in electronically, and there was a bit of chaos. I spent about 2 weeks trying to get hold of somebody in Lloyd's as a company, going through their head office. Frankly, there was no response at all. I was leaving messages, no responses were coming back whatsoever. And eventually, a person called me, and we had the first sensible person in the process. It was somebody who's, I think, an assistant dispenser in Swindon, used to run his own company, came to work for Lloyd's, and they use him when they just have a situation that they don't know how to handle. And within 24 hours, he had got some sense running. And a particular member of the Lloyd's staff down at the Birdwood used their initiative and started the process whereby they had a door service, which is what it is at the moment, that you can actually go to the door, knock on the door, they come out, see you, and if your script has been dispensed, they can provide it to you, or you can, if you've got a handwritten, or sorry, a printed script, you actually have something done with it. Now, I went to Health Watch, the Health and Wellbeing Board in West Berkshire Council, and I went through every avenue that was official that I could think of or could come across. And of course, ironically, the number of things that councils are responsible for, neither West Berkshire and certainly not Thatcham Town Council has any direct responsibility to do anything with regards to the health provision and the pharmacy services. But eventually, the kinds of comments and the interrogations that were coming from officers and members of both West Berkshire Council and this council, I think, began to build a bit of traction. I think that's how they started to get their act a bit together. It is very far from perfect. They were hoping to start opening the internal doors between the surgery and the Boots pharmacy from today, but apparently there's been a delay, so it's not quite happened yet. I'm going to have a meeting with the practice manager tomorrow, and I will obviously report back both unofficially or individually at some point, but specifically at the next meeting, give whatever update there is that we can give. I don't think anybody's got any doubt that there are very real difficulties for pharmacists and getting pharmacists at the moment, but it should not come out in the wash for members of the public, and particularly for people who are sick and ill and rely on particular drugs being available and so on. It shouldn't come out in the wash for them not being able to get the necessary pharmaceutical products, etc. So I've given you my comments, hopefully to be able to be updated maybe not at the next meeting, maybe in the council meeting. I've had the meeting with the practice manager tomorrow. But I'm happy to take any questions or any points anybody wishes to raise. Now, I'm just going to say there is a member of the public with us, and she's actually indicating that she would like to speak. Can I ask that we don't suspend handing orders now, do we? We do.
Just grant permission for a member.
I hope the members of the committee are in agreement that please do tell us or ask.
Please come forward.
Oh, yes.
So you don't have to shout.
Right, what I want to ask is, everybody is queuing at the two chemists that we have got available now. What are the chances?
Going to sit down.
What are the chances of some covering being put up, erected, so that people that have to queue now, while all this is going on, don't stand in the rain, the snow, or whatever else? Because all that's going to happen is they are going to become ill just queuing for their prescriptions that's supposed to make them better.
Absolutely. That was one of the 2 points that I was really trying to get at. And I did go and check today, which is how I know that the internal panels have not yet been opened between the surgery and Boots. However, they have now accepted that there's no point in trying to enforce COVID rules and having people 2 meters apart. So the result was they had 6, 7, 8 people inside the pharmacy. So they weren't out in the cold and the wet. And when I went there were literally 3 people outside just waiting for enough room to get into the pharmacy. So I think the immediate problem that we had there, and we had started to talk about whether or not we were going to try and erect something down the side of the surgery and all the rest of it at public expense or whatever, that I don't think is now going to be necessary, because I think that is the bit that they've actually bitten on and are trying to do something about. But your point is very well made indeed.
I think you've got the same problem down, is it Burwood, where you're also...
Of course. Yes, you have.
That's the only reason I'm asking. It's because you've only now got 2 main pharmacies.
Three, yes. There's Boots, there's Crown Mead, and there's the Birdwood.
Brown Mead is very rarely open, which is the reason I'm going to the 2 point, just the 2. And those 2 main ones are where people are queuing outside, and the queues get longer because we're only down to 2.
Since I've been sort of taking this on as a personal quest, I was not actually twigging that was the situation down at Birdwood. I thought Birdwood was sort of functioning, broadly speaking, okay. What I will do is I will go and see what's happening.
The only reason I knew about Burwood is the husband was down doing something down by there, and some people said that they were queuing up outside. No shelter. I could be wrong.
No, there isn't any real shelter outside. I think there's a bit of a sort of overhanging roof, isn't there? But it's very small. Yes. No, I take your point completely. Thank you. But I will need to take that up directly and see whether there's something that can be done there. Yeah.
Okay.
I think everybody indicated. Richard, will you go first?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've looked at these, in particular the first one about boats, which of course I've noticed for weeks, months now. But what exactly is the problem? Is this the staff in Boots and they insisting on a 2 meter rule, and so nobody's allowed in the pharmacy, and so they've got to wait outside? It just, if that is the case, it seems to be wholly wrong now that we've overcome COVID. I have prescriptions all the time, so I've attended various outlets, and before COVID came along, there'd be people waiting for to get their medication. Okay, there'll be a lot of people there, but we should be getting back to that situation now, not have queues forced upon us. Each time I drive by and I see all of this queue, I wonder, I say to myself, why on earth they putting up with this? And why is this? Okay, so they've had the access way between the surgery and the pharmacy shut, and it remains shut even though it should be open. But who is shutting that? Is that the doctor's surgery or the pharmacy? Again, that's something should be done.
I believe the answer to that question is, I believe it's the surgery. But the comment that I was making is that as of today, I believe that Boots have stopped trying to enforce a policy of saying there's a 2 metre restriction between people, which meant that you could only have 3 customers actually in the pharmacy at a time. And as I say, when I went there during the afternoon, I think I counted it was either 6 or 7 people inside and just 3 outside. And the only reason anybody was outside was that there was not sufficient room to sort of, unless you're going to be like a tube journey, there's no way of actually getting in and shoving other people out of the way. So I think that immediate problem, I think it is resolved, but we all live here and use the facilities, and we'll keep our eyes open at what's happening.
So with Crown Mead, then again, I've been there. You knock on the door, and somebody comes to the door. Why are they following that policy? Is that the same reason to keep people out rather than have people in and waiting as they used to be, as I used to go in?
I believe it's because they don't have a regular pharmacist at the moment, and they're trying to seek a regular pharmacist, is my understanding. I am not speaking on behalf of Boots or the surgery or Lloyd's, but it's conversations that I've had and things that and statements that have been made to me. The issue is a lack of if they had a regular pharmacist full-time in there, then they'd be able to start up and run it as a normal chemist shop. So you can go in and get your tube of ointment and have your script dispensed. That is my understanding. I think that David was next, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It seems to be an appalling situation, and I certainly didn't have too many answers either. I did get a flyer through my door to do with postal prescriptions, which I think are being available. So I didn't spend too much time looking at that because I don't use prescriptions. But if you're aware of that, it might be appropriate that we somehow make other people in the community aware of that if comments come to us. My only other comment was, thank you firstly, Chairman, for doing everything you've been doing, but is there any other opportunity through West Berkshire District Council to apply more pressure? Or are they completely unable to apply any common sense to this? I think it's an appalling situation going into the winter. I think just 2 pharmacies being open.
The crunch, as I understand it, is that neither West Berkshire and most certainly not the Town Council have any statutory position in this. You've got a Health and Wellbeing Board that have made comments and have written, as a direct result of the comments that I was making, they've actually written to various bodies, including, I think, the Pharmacy Council and so on, raising the issues that we're getting here in Thatcham and elsewhere. But West Berkshire Council, unlike so many issues, does not have any statutory right to do something. That is my comprehension of things. I do not speak as a lawyer, but that is my comprehension.
I understand not statutory, right? But there's a moral obligation.
And genuinely, I think that's what's been going on, is that as a Town Council, the fact that we've been trying to put pressure on, that has been recognised and it has been responded to an extent.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, as has been said, all 3 organisations we mentioned are private businesses, the 2 surgeries and the doctors, the two pharmacies and doctor surgery, all private businesses.
Yeah.
and we don't have any direct leverage over them, and the problems are well intentioned. So it may be COVID, it may be lack of pharmacists, but it's not something that's in their control, very much control either. So David is correct that there are several online firms that do online pharmacy, particularly for repeat prescriptions. A neighbour of mine was using that, and it was pretty effective. When this happened, I did some investigation about a cover beside boots. The structurally, it's quite difficult because the footway is narrow, and anything that is in place more than 4 weeks requires planning permission, even if it is otherwise temporary. So that wouldn't be if the problem continues, that is not a straightforward problem to solve. Whatever the structural solution, we would technically be a breach of planning conditions if we did it. If we put something up for the winter. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yes. After the meeting, I can give you the email address of the Chief Retail Officer for Lloyd's Group.
Yes,
So,
yes, please.
might escalate it a bit. Very useful website that I've just been looking at.
I think you got further than I did with trying to get into the structure of Lloyd's Chemists.
So anyone listening, it's a website ceoemail.com, and the content is obvious from the title.
Is there anything else? Yeah,
Do you have any information about where all these pharmacists have gone? Is this down to Brexit and they led back to?
yeah, probably. I don't know. Yeah, probably. I should think so. I really don't know. I haven't sought to find out. I don't think that training is training a pharmacist about a three-year degree, something like that.
Losing lots of skilled people.
Are there any comments that anybody wants to make other than my telling you that I've got the meeting with the practice manager tomorrow, and that I am literally keeping my eye on what I can see, and with the comments that you've made, I will certainly make a point of going down and checking literally what's happening down at the Lloyd's in the Birdwood. I thought it was just there and happily working away, and I should have realised that I'd be under the same pressure, won't they? Richard.
If you're seeing somebody tomorrow, perhaps you can say that the issue was raised and debated at this very learned committee last night, and considerable concern was voiced at the apparent lack of progress and to resolution, something like that. So you've got something behind you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. I sent an email earlier today saying that there was going to be this meeting, and was there anything they wanted to add at this stage, and that was the point when we tied up the meeting for with them tomorrow. So thank you very much indeed. But I will very happily say that this the committee is considerably concerned. Is there anything that anybody else wants to add or questions to ask on this item at this time? Thank you. Item 7, Thatcham placemaking strategy. Well, I think the people.
Would you like to stay for the rest? Would you like to stay for the rest of the agenda, or
Sorry?
would you like to stay for other items on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Deputy Leader of Council, I think you'll find this charming lady has got another item.
Oh, apology. That was I just didn't want you to stay in case you want to.
Yeah. Right, item 7.
Until the next item.
Please forgive me. May I ask you to go and sit back in the public seating until the next item that you wish to comment on. Sorry. Though I don't think I'd have confused you with the councillor if we'd come to a vote, but whatever. Item 7, Thatcham placemaking strategy. To receive a verbal report from the chairman following recent meetings with Hemingway Design. We've had a meeting. We've gone and had a walk round of a large part of the area within the red line that was designated as the area that the town council wanted to be investigated and to get the advice and the urban planning put together on, if that was English. And we've then subsequently had a meeting where businesses were invited to attend. We had a number of quite a decent selection of businesses and other interested parties attending and giving their views on things that should be looked at. It was not in any sense a decision-making body. It was a meeting that allowed ideas to be put forward. And Hemingway and their colleagues, urban designers, I can't remember the name of the other company, but Hemingway are fronting it up. So Hemingway have gone away with about 2 hours worth of meeting, comments, little working groups that came up with various ideas to be looked at. This was in no sense a set of decisions being made that they then had to go away and price up, and this is how we'll do it. It is to see whether or not the kinds of things that were emanating from the group would actually be capable of being put into practice and what would be involved in doing it. Where we stand at the moment is that we're trying to have a meeting or meetings where the 4 major supermarket groups that are in the centre of Thatcham, Waitrose, Morrison's and Sainsbury's, where we can be speaking to them, whether it's one single meeting or whether we have to go speak with them individually, so that we get their input, because obviously what happens in Norway is critically determined by what happens with Waitrose and with what happens with the co-op, and to a lesser extent with Morrison's. And it is very much a case of it's a work in progress. Very happy to take questions, observations, whatever. Is there anything that you think I should be adding to that, Madam Clerk?
No, Chairman, I think that's a good summary.
Thank you. So I think one of the things, firstly, I was quite impressed by them, and that they're sort of
Yes,
sort of not radical, but creative thinking. But I think the key message that came from me at this stage was the importance of the A4 to the towns, the style of the A4 to the town centre, and therefore at least part of the solution for the town centre lies along the A4 rather than in the town centre itself.
yes, yes. Are there other comments, questions, whatever?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was in the first evening meeting. They had 2 meetings Sunday. And in that first meeting, I was encouraged by their observations. As Pike said, I think they were quite creative. The key things I took away was thinking longer term. What do you want the town centre to become? Do you want it to be a place where you could go and buy items, knickknacks, objects, material things? Or do you want it to trend towards more of this sort of experience centre culture of cafe culture and being able to sit outdoors? So there's quite sort of profound questions about what you want the town centre to become. And there was some discussion about what's the importance of having the car park spaces in the middle versus the value of that space if you were to open it up for seating and other facilities, which are all really good questions. And I think when I spoke to them, it was on the day before the market. So I'd be interested to see what their feedback would be after the visit to the town centre on a Friday morning when the market is in place and there's no car park spacing, because that's when the town actually comes to life and you don't need the car park space in there. So it was, I found it quite a thought-provoking discussion, and basically I look forward to their feedback and that of residents.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do remember they came to the about the A4. I thought right at the end of the evening when they said if you want the A4 reduced to sort of 20 miles an hour throughout, so that lorries creep through, then we can deliver it for you. However, I mean, to me, the A4 is there, and I don't see, unless there's going to be a major road building, but there's any opportunity to divert it. We're stuck with the A4, and therefore I do not personally feel that anything major can be done. What we're looking at is the town centre and how that can be realistically improved, presumably without major demolition and rebuild, which I don't see is actively on the cards. Perhaps the two things that struck me we should be addressing was the renovation, not necessarily replacement, but renovation of the public toilets. So there's something else other than public loos. The building's nice, I like the building, but it could become something different, perhaps a cafe or something, and perhaps some more greenery within the centre of Thatcham instead of the car park. So yes, there could be a bit more of the cafe culture in the centre of town. Perhaps that's all. I don't know how achievable that is. That's my thought.
I think the comment I would make is that this is absolutely the sort of stuff that needs to be fed into Hemingway. I mean, I wouldn't want to prevent anybody from giving any view whatsoever in this meeting, but this meeting, I should very much doubt the minutes of this meeting will be pored over by Hemingway. If, as a council, we want to take a specific view on what we want to see and have a vote on it and adopt it, but even then, Hemingway have been retained by West Berkshire Council to do this as a piece of academic work. Academic is the wrong term, it's not an academic work, to do it as a piece of, I can't find the right word.
Consultancy.
Sorry?
Consultancy.
Yes, as a proper piece of consultancy. And whether you want the, I don't know if I'm misinterpreting what you said, whether you want the A4 to be improved or deproved or rerouted or whatever, those are comments you need to make to Hemingway or to feed through in some way into Hemingway. I think we're all going to have the opportunity to be putting comments in directly and to be putting in comments as a council if appropriate.
Thank you. I think the last thing that we should be doing is telling them what we want, because that is the exact opposite of why they've been retained, is to give their ideas from the perspective of working across a broad range of places with a broad range of professional experiences. And therefore they will come up with ideas that we won't think of if we will be limited to what we know of Thatcham and what it was, and not the various different things as it could be. And that's what we're trying to find out, is what it could be and what's the best of those options for the future of Thatcham.
I think that sums it up.
In
my opinion.
So one other thing, just on the question of speed limit, I learnt this weekend that Oxfordshire County Council has now given the opportunity to any community who wishes to have a 20-mile-an-hour limit through its centre, including on A roads, to do so. And also driving through London at the weekend, there are most of the built up sort of main centres in London are now a 20-mile-an-hour limit. So there's no reason principle why that couldn't happen in Thatcham.
I think that Hemingway have got that idea in their heads that they might want to play, that they want to suggest changes to speed limits and whatever. And I think that from that point of view, we just need Oxfordshire and London, neither of them have any control over what happens in West Berkshire. So let's keep it that way. Are there other comments that this is very much, we're at the early stage of a work in progress, and definitely feed our ideas in, and when the time comes, I think there's going to be some kind of, presumably online, it'll always be online, won't it? An online questionnaire for people, and I would think there's individuals we can respond, and we can respond as a council if we wish to, on whatever ideas they're putting up for consideration. I think we have dealt with that item. Item 8 is the Victoria Cross Memorial Stones. What I would like us to do is there are some technical issues here with regards to stones. None of them are bad, but they do need to get resolved. And I'm going to make the suggestion, if the committee is prepared to go along with it, that perhaps Councillor Cole and the leader of council and myself actually do some work with the clerk to just try and pull things together with a view to bringing back to the next meeting. It should still give us sufficient time to get all of this done before we finish this municipal council year, which I'm very keen indeed that we do complete this whole exercise inside this council term. I mean, obviously it's been very much delayed by 2 years of COVID, but if we can pull things together, get them all stamped and put together, so it's a neat proposal just to put in front of this committee. Is the committee happy that we proceed in that way? So we just have a little working party, Councillor Cole, Councillor Dillon as leader, and myself to try and pull things together with the clerk.
So I think that might make sense, and then part of the reason why I was suggesting something similar was because the financial question is outstanding here. It says consider external funding opportunities. I think we need that consideration to be made, and to summarise what funding opportunities have been reviewed.
Yeah.
Are there any other opportunities that need to be explored, and then come back with what the conclusions of those discussions are, so there's a bit more understanding of just how do we fund this with the constraints of the budget that we have. So your proposal I'll be happy with.
Thank you. So I'm going to take that as being a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
Well, can I just speak on the issue of funds? I'm sympathetic to the proposal. Looking at paragraph 4, there's the reference to various funds. Have we got money set aside to cover this, or are we applying for grants wholly or in part for the cost? I'd rather hope surely we're not. It's going to be 10,000 quid. We can do that from our own resources and get it done before the end of this administration.
We have got funds earmarked in the budget, and funding is obviously always an issue. Funds are very tight within the council at this time, and obviously we are going through exactly the same situation that everybody else in the country is. Increase in or the 10% rate of inflation which we've got at the moment, and it doesn't make it at all easy. But your comments taken to board.
Is that an example of what?
These are certainly examples of what can be. Yes. So the proposal which has been seconded is that we set up this, I suppose, effectively a mini working party of the leader, Councillor Cole, and myself, to bring a finished proposal back to the next meeting of this committee. Do you wish to speak?
I wouldn't make it a working party just in case one of you can't attend. Make it an informal meeting.
Informal group. Informal group. Okay. Informal group.
So you'll be coming back with the deal.
Yes.
This is what we propose.
Yes.
Get us to vote on it, and then it comes.
Yes.
Okay.
Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Item 9, mobile banking and banking hub. Really, what is set on the agenda, just about it. We are waiting on Barclays coming back. The manager that met with the clerk and myself on the 7th of October. It wasn't written down there. I certainly don't remember which date it was. I think that we were hoping dare I say assuming, never assume. I think we were assuming it was going to be a fairly quick response and within a couple of weeks it'll all be up and running. Well, that's not how it is. And get asked the clerk to do a chasing email and find out where things stand. But at the time, it seemed extremely positive that there didn't seem to be a fundamental problem. I was suggesting, and we were hoping that maybe we could have the Mobile Barclays Bank come to the Broadway on a Friday to run it in conjunction with the market. But as we've not heard anything, we don't know whether the problem is they just can't do Fridays or they don't really want to do Thatcham after all or whatever. But I think they were pretty positive. The apparent vibe was pretty positive. He's the manager for a fairly substantial area, so I suppose he's probably got quite a few things on his plate. But that really is that's the update. Item B, banking hub. The idea is that perhaps one of the vacant premises can become a banking hub, and a banking hub is where a space is provided that any of the banks that choose to go into it can use for their own banking service. So effectively, they've got a sign inside the bit of building and at a desk, and they can get on with their own banking services. Perhaps one will be 3 days a week, and one will be 5 days a week, and one will be 2 days a week. But at the moment, I'm not really quite sure how we can take it very much further forward at the moment. If anybody becomes aware of the detail of how banking hubs work, in terms of do they work, then any information will be greatly received. You look as if you were going to make a comment.
I was going to make a comment. So I've just opened the document, and it's something different from what I'd heard on the radio, because there's a similar scheme for cash point machines where there aren't any available. But looking at the locations where they're trialling, I think they're further away from the nearest branch than Thatcham is. They're sort of quite separated, isolated communities. So I think that if it did happen, we would probably not be very high on the list, because there are a lot of places where you might not even be on a public transport away from the nearest bank. So the information is there. It's only a trial. It's a pilot at the moment, I suspect. We just got to keep a watching brief in case it does take off.
Thank you. Are there any other comments anybody wishes to make? Move to item 10, Small Business Saturday. Specifically, up until was it 2 years ago now? Time flies, not the rest of it. We were having free car parking that we paid for, and that West Berkshire then permitted us to have the free car parking because we paid for it. West Berkshire, very properly, is very much trying to push forward the idea of getting people onto buses and not coming into car parks. And I would suggest that we do not try to pursue. I think we're probably too close in now anyway, even if we wanted to, because it's the 3rd of December. And I shouldn't think we would even be inside a window to make any arrangements to work in that way and to have free car parking. But I do think that the fundamental approach that West Berkshire is now adopting of trying to encourage free bus services into the various towns, into Newbury and so on, is a very good way to go. But one point that did disappoint me was that one of the dates that they're doing free buses across the area, which and advertised as getting you in to the Newbury Victorian Christmas experience, is Saturday, the 3rd of December, which of course is our Small Business Saturday. And I have requested that though it's too late to be put on any printed material, that West Berkshire is going to include it in the online information that is not only available to use the bus to get into Newbury for their Christmas extravaganza, but they can also use the bus free to get into Thatcham for Small Business Day. So we've won a half a battle there.
Thank you. So the residents within Thatcham, they have the 1A and the 1C and the jet black, which is moderately close to most of the residents, but there are surrounding villages which we'd like to come into Thatcham, and they have no bus service at all. So as far as West Berkshire Council are concerned, it's on their bike. But of course, they don't have transport into Newbury either. So laudable aim, perhaps they should have thought a bit more about how widely available that service is. It's not helpful to all of the residents of West Berkshire.
Yeah, I think that's always the problem. I mean, I absolutely accept that the officers at West Berkshire, as indeed our own officers here at the Town Council, are asked to do an awful lot of things and do them well and consistently and very, very, very punctiliously. But there is a tendency within West Berkshire to still be a bit Newbury centric. When you bear in mind that Newbury has a population of about 35,000, and I think that Thatcham has a population of about 26 or 27,000, this is not comparing, it's not fair, it's not appropriate that they don't put a little bit more work in sometimes at West Berkshire to thinking through what can be done for Thatcham as well as for Newbury. And certainly this particular Small Business Saturday, I found just a little bit, it was a little bit irritating that it's shown as being a free way to get in for the Victorian experience in Newbury, but Small Business Saturday didn't even get a look in. But I think online we now will get a look in. Are there any other comments, observations, questions?
Just a comment, if they bring Newbury a little bit, then things must have improved greatly. Well, they used to favour Newbury a lot, is what I meant.
Oh, I see. Yes. Right. Okay. Item 11. Public toilets. What is there to say? Any of us may have gone and had a look, and all the loos, I only looked on the gents. All the loos that I will have access to are working and working properly, and in the first sort of 24 hours, none of them have been vandalised. So a step in the right direction. I don't know, are there any comments, observations, questions anybody has?
My comment is I propose that we ratify the expenditure under item 11A, because there's not really any alternative.
Yes.
I said, well, the money's already been spent, I guess. Sorry, I'm just turning over the page. That's 11A with these two payments of 1,500 and 4,000. Came up before and I made some comments when we had £1,000 spent on a tap that I thought some of the expenditure was excessive, more reminiscent of Elton John's bathroom rather than the public bath. However, perhaps I'm just
I don't mean to cut you, but perhaps for the record, we can say, isn't it that we can actually think of our public losing as being of a standard with Elton John's bathroom. I've personally seen Elton John's bathroom, but Richard, I think you probably move in higher circles.
We do, yes. That seems I'm just reliving that that expense. Perhaps I still live in the world where it's in the 5 shillings.
I think it's a bit more than that now, yeah.
Shocked at some of the prices that we find.
Chairman, I'm happy to propose that we ratify the expenditure if or second that it's already been ratified. I just going to ask through you to the chair, to the town clerk, whether this is covered by insurance. Do you expect an insurance claim and reimbursement in the future?
I respond, I will have to check that. I know we have put in a few insurance recently. I can't recall if this is one of them, but it may well be. So I'll check that with Kent.
Thank you.
That's a positive thought, isn't it? Yes, I certainly hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
I think we possibly might have.
We have a proposal that's been seconded. Those in favour? Thank you very much. We are moving to 11B, which is changing places. I think probably better, Madam Clerk, if you speak to this than I do, because I think you've actually had the meetings, haven't you?
So you may recall that West Berkshire Council are receiving central government funding to install changing places in the district. They applied for more money than they were awarded. The funds that they were awarded their own capital funding. They're hoping to do two, one in Thatcham and one in Hungerford. So we've met the property services manager to look at the feasibility of them in our public toilets. As you go into the toilets, what was the office on the right-hand side, that's where it's proposed to go. Unfortunately, it is slightly narrower than the recommended dimensions, so there would need to be some reconstruction. But it's not impossible. It would just mean that the main entrance would have to move to the left, and that area widened to accommodate the change in places. That's all with Richard and his team. They're on the way to do whatever they need to do next, and will report back to us in due course.
Thank you.
But they certainly didn't rule it out.
Which I think is very, very positive. I'm begging. I would imagine that by now we all know what changing places is. Changing places is specifically the business whereby people who are disabled, and particularly if they're beginning to get a bit more advanced in years. So it's not just a question of being able to change a baby, but it's actually being able to have the appropriate facilities in place that an adult who's disabled can make use of them, or have somebody with them to help make use of them. So that's why it actually involves quite a bit of expenditure to make sure that the right things are in the right place and there's sufficient space and so on to do it. I don't know if there's any. Are there any questions or points that anybody wants to make at this time? And item C is proposed control entry system. This arose because of the damage, the consistent pattern of vandalism and damage that was occurring in the public toilets. And with a very, very sad heart indeed, I don't like the idea of charging the use of public toilets at all, but to actually be able to not be perpetually spending money on repairing vandalism. I asked the clerk or the committee asked the clerk to look into what would be involved in perhaps putting in some kind of chargeable entry system so that it would deter the vandals from coming in. And that is really where we stand at the moment, that we're getting the information together and seeing whether, if this committee and the council wanted to do that, that it could then be done at the same time as the changing places operation was done, because that would involve some bits of building and so on, as you've heard. Are there any points, questions?
Thank you, Chairman. The only looms I can think of around here are where we have to pay is once in the wharf in Jubilee. I just wonder, they may have introduced payment for the same reason, or to deter vandalism. Has it worked? And we find out from West Berks if sorry, or Newbury District, Newbury County.
Town council, yeah, I
If there is to be charging, I mean, we're trustees for public money, and we shouldn't be just fishing it out in order to deal with vandalism, if there's an avenue forward that we can take. So charging a reasonable fee would be, I think I'd support that in principle. I do hope it can be hard entry, because nobody's got any cash nowadays for 20p or 50p or whatever it is. You just stick it on the card as you do in the Waitrose car park. Trouble is, of course, with all these card machines, it takes so long to sometimes to operate that you have a bit of a longer wait before you get in to believe yourself. But
I'll assure you that I saw the clerk's pen go to the pad of paper as you spoke. So I know the clerk will take that up with Newbury Town Council and see what their experience has been. Councillor Lister.
Yeah, actually, that's a second one Councillor Crumley is saying there, because as you say charging, I kind of think of those little turnstiles, you know, you can whatever 5 pence or 20 pence or 10 pence, whatever. but I actually I'd be a bit concerned whether they would deter somebody who is out to cause mischief. Because if they're out to cause mischief, they'll just leg over those things and do whatever damage they want to do. So I think it is good to see if there's evidence that is any particular scheme has been proven to actually deter vandalism, and it's not just an expense that we put in only to find it makes very little difference. So, but you know, even if Newbury's not got any problem, maybe they didn't have a problem to start with. So you need to find evidence of where there has been a problem and they've managed to resolve it. Possibly the Newbury scheme has done that, but be grateful for the town clerk to do a little bit of research there.
Well, I'm sure the clerk will initially go to Newbury Town Council to see if their experience is in any way similar to what we've had, and so therefore whether there is something that we can take from them, and if not, then I'm sure we'll try and cast the net further to get relevant information as to how these things work. Are there other comments about it? Yes.
The cameras are the next thing, I suppose.
We've got a. It's in there. The camera's in there. That's why I'm so broken-hearted. I just couldn't believe it. We have got CCTV in there, and despite having the CCTV, the vandalism continues. Oh. Yes, no, we've got the camera. We've already paid for that. That's in there, operational, functioning, and perhaps offline from this meeting, we will have a conversation in some detail as to why the camera is not being able to be used appropriately to tie people down. Are there any comments you want to make at this moment, or shall we have that conversation offline and then bring it back to the committee? Yep. Okay. Then we move to item 12. It does seem a little bit like the Councillor Jeffrey and Pike show tonight, doesn't it? The Councillor Jeffrey and Pike provide any updates in this regard. The update is extremely simple, that West Berkshire Highways are absolutely convinced there is no problem, despite the fact that 2 people have now tripped over the same curb, one of them requiring an ambulance to attend. I'm very disappointed with the response from within West Berkshire Highways on this particular issue, particularly as my own suggestion was as straightforward as paint the darn thing yellow, so that it just highlighted that there was a rising slab of stone that 2 people had already tripped over. I don't honestly know quite how to take it further forward if Highways are saying that it's not a danger and they don't care, and that's it. So I don't know if you, Councillor Pike, do you have any additional comment to make?
Well, I think part of the problem is if people don't report, there is one of the options on the online reporting is make an insurance claim. So if people don't report it in a way which indicates a seriousness, then it won't be taken seriously.
Thank you for that.
But I noticed that this actually is referring partly to signage. So I've got some comments on signage as well.
Do you want to give your comments on signage?
I don't think you wanted to cover, yeah, I can do that now, yes, so.
Yeah.
So, the Broadway is having some surfacing work and it looks to be quite substantial because it's taking 3 days.
Yeah.
Which means that there's going to be people there relining putting out new lining. So hopefully some of the issues will go. I suggested to the clerk that contacting the council to ask if they could put the triangles on the raised parts. Triangles that show it's raised to slow them down at the same time. If they've got the people doing the painting there, then that's much easier to request. And also earlier today, you contacted me about the people turning right from the Broadway straight in cutting across into the high street. So there's a keep left sign, which is fairly discreet. It's not illuminated. And there's a no entry written across the right-hand side, which I think is not actually a binding statement. It's not a binding signage, but it's actually rather worn as well. So with a bit of luck, and perhaps if the clerk could contact them urgently tomorrow to say if they're not resurfacing that bit, could they repaint the no entry marks at the same time, because they are rather worn out. I think other things probably would be more, in terms of road safety, would be more substantial and might require traffic regulation orders, but those are things that can be done fairly straightforwardly and hopefully as part of the work that's already going on in the Broadway.
Are there other comments?
I will look online at look offline after the meeting about exactly what signage might make that more enforceable, the turning of right, but I need to look at the traffic signs manual.
Councillor.
Sorry, you're just on the turning right.
1 moment, Councillor.
I was just going to observe, I just thought yours very sensible suggestion of splashing a bit of yellow paint on the bit, which is the trip hazard, makes a lot of sense. It's unfortunate that West Berkshire Council don't seem to see the logic in that.
I think
It seems to me to be a rather incredible reaction to, I don't know, even having had the discussion about the cost of paint nowadays, I would not have thought that was particularly an expensive solution. But
I
anyway,
think the problem is that
if you will, 1 moment, I think that Councillor Crumley was really
So,
big.
through you, Chairman. So, Councillor Pipes talked about turning right into High Street. I wasn't quite clear on the mischief.
turning into the Broadway, instead of going around the Broadway, you cut across straight, people turning into the Broadway from the A4 to cut straight across into the High Street rather than going around the Broadway.
So driving against the wrong way.
All right, sorry.
And until they actually are into the high street itself.
No, that's.
I've seen it. That's how I became aware of it. And when I mentioned it to a particular trader, they said, "Oh, every day." And I was very taken aback because it's
As I am.
yeah. Have we dealt with everything on that item at this moment? Public space, item 13, public spaces protection order. Please may I invite you to come to the table again, because I think this is the one that you'd like to speak about, isn't it? Comment from the chair is just that at last, after quite a period of time and lots of work and people responding to surveys and all sorts of things like that, on the 11th, we 3 days ago now, isn't it? Now have a PSBO in place, which means police in the central Thatcham or within the designated area, because there's a line that goes around. But basically within the central area of Thatcham, the police can actually instruct somebody that's behaving inappropriately to leave and to not return for a period of time up to and including 24 hours. So it just means they've got an additional tool in the armory for controlling inappropriate behaviour. Would you like to say anything or ask anything at this moment first?
Well, I welcome it, obviously. Neighbourhood Watch welcomes it.
Yes.
Hopefully it will cut down on a lot of what has been going on and help the police immensely. We have obviously had, or rather, Liberal Watch have heard various people saying about various things that have been going on. This hopefully will put a stop to a lot of it.
Thank you very, yeah. I hope so too. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Pike.
Yeah, so thank you. So the agenda says that it will be effective from the 11th of November for a period of 3 years. I think it probably should say it will be in force. Because the reason I was slightly late to this meeting is that I witnessed a case of antisocial behaviour this evening. So, and of course, it's only effective if there's someone there, a PCSO or a police officer to actually take action on this. I will talk to the clerk afterwards about the specifics to see if we can address that. But that's, of course, the problem that, and I suspect that from the conversation I had, that some of the particular offenders might be familiar with the rotas of the officers in the Broadway.
Are there other comments? Councillor Crowley.
Well, this flyer, is this going to be put out and about? Is this going to be in form of publicity for the wrongdoers of Thatcham? It doesn't seem to say when it's starting, such a form. Particularly very longer one I've got. I thought this was the first thing it should say, will be made from 1st November or whatever.
I really do beg your pardon. I didn't literally catch everything that you just said.
This notice is fine. Should
Yes.
it not give a date for commencement?
I think
It is commenced. Yeah, it has commenced.
Oh, yeah.
So
A message it has been.
so this is effective as of now.
that is the notice, I think, that is going up in the Broadway. It's presumably already up if you look, and therefore it is, if you see the notice, it is in force.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are there other comments, questions,
commencement.
observations? I suppose the observation is very simply that we sincerely hope that in this period we will get the sort of antisocial behaviour that we're talking about very much under control, and it won't be necessary to renew it. But if it is necessary at that point to renew it, then I assume that we will go through the process and renew it if necessary. I just hope it's not necessary.
To say there that, well, from my perspective, unfortunately, the process for renewal is far less rigorous than the process for initiation. And I know a case elsewhere in West Berkshire where one was renewed where there was no grounds for it. The antisocial behaviour had stopped. So I think that we need to be careful about that.
3 years' time, we'll worry about it when it happens. We'll worry about it when it happens. Those of us here, those of us not, yeah.
Thank you.
But it's all. Thank you very much indeed for coming, Letty. Item 14, Jubilee Sensory Garden. To note that an event to officially open the Jubilee Sensory Garden in Bransford Road was held on Tuesday, the 30th of September 2022, attended by several key community representatives. So we had the chairman of West Berkshire Council, the mayor actually did the cutting of the tape with gold scissors. I think I'm glad that it was dry and sunny. Whether that's the result of global warming or not, I'm glad that it was dry and sunny. It was a very nice event. It was a very nice event. And it's marvellous that we've got something to remember the Platinum Jubilee by, and it's marvellous that we've got such a lovely facility for people to come and just quietly enjoy. And on odd occasions when I've been coming to the council offices, I've walked through and I've had 2 or 3 people that I've had chats with who have been sitting there enjoying it and saying, isn't it lovely, all the rest of it. So it is definitely an appreciated facility. And I'm sure that as people become aware of it, it will become more appreciated. Are there comments or observations? Thank you very much indeed. I think on that basis, that concludes the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman.